Hi my beautiful people, today we are making pupusas and I am no pupusa expert, but I do want to make things on my own, homemade, where and when I can. And this is one of those things that I just can't find good tasting ones or well-made ones, I could say, around in my area. So I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna make it myself. And I'm just showing you here what it is that you need for the whole thing. And this cheese actually ended up being good, but it's $10 per a pound, so it's very expensive when I know you can find 5-pound bags like at BJ's or something that are more affordable. And we're gonna use pork, 2 pounds of that meat, and anything for like chicharrones, that would be good. We need a big leek, because we're not gonna use the whole thing, but we'll need a leek. Some red onions, also didn't picture it here, but we'll need a piece of white onion, garlic, Roma tomatoes, a medium or small size cabbage. We probably won't use the whole thing. And then as far as I actually just wanted to show you, like in the back there I have like a weight for like food if you want to measure out your like harina or maseca, which is here. This one is tortimasa. I didn't use it, but I just wanted to show you a bag so you can see what to buy when you're at the supermarket, or anything that's maseca or tortimasa. I know there's like different brands, but basically just masa de maíz, right? Or harina de maíz. And we're going to use oregano, cumin, black pepper, and beef bouillon, but it's consomé de res. This one has tomato, but it doesn't have to have tomato, it's fine. And salt, obviously, I just didn't put it in here. And when you're gonna need a green bell pepper as well. And then I just wanted to give you up close and personal so you can see in case you want to use this cheese afterwards. I like the way that it worked, but I could have done without. And what else? That should be it. So let's get to making the pupusas. So I went ahead and cut up the meat into little chunks, like little cubes, not too big, not too small. And I also washed the meat. That is your prerogative whether you do or you don't. I washed my meat. No shade, no tea. And then after, it is kind of wet here, it has a lot of water, which you don't want because it's not going to fry up nice, but it doesn't really matter because I want it to release the water anyway in the pan, so it doesn't really matter. And here I just have a pretty deep, I guess you could say, like pot, but you could use a shallow like saucepan or something too, really whatever you want, preference. And then you need a lid also, because I'm going to cover it to kind of just sweat out all the water, because you want it to fry up towards the end. You want it to fry up. And you see all that water there. I'm not going to put that water in there, so you're just going to like take piece by piece out of there and put it into the hot pan. And this pan has to be hot. Okay, if it's not sizzling when you put in like a little drop of water, then you don't want it like that. And then once it's really, really hot, I will add the meat. And just an FYI, everyone has their method of making like chicharron or like their meat for pupusas. This is just how I have done it, and it's worked out. And I put a lid on the meat just so it can release all the water, so when it gets closer to when everything gets evaporated water wise in the pot, it gets really crispy. It gets nice and crispy and brown and not burnt. So that's just why. And then no oil. I didn't add no oil to the pan. It was just a hot pan, and you kind of just let all the juices come out. So you see how there's like water in here? We want this to evaporate, but that's why there's no need to add any additional oil or anything, because the pork itself, the little fatty pieces that I added, are going to release a lot of oil that will naturally fry up the meat. So I'm just gonna put a lid on it and just let it do its thing. It's probably took like about 20 minutes for it to cook all together. 20-25 minutes, didn't really time it. And I just wanted to show you up close and personal the spices. So this consomé de tomate con res is basically chicken bouillon with tomato, but you could use this or you could use the chicken one. It's really up to you. Whatever you have on hand you can use. You could even use some chicken broth if you have that and not the powder. Black pepper, anyone, and a little bit of cumin. We're not going to use a lot, but we are going to use some. Gives it the little distinctive taste. And oregano, I just have this brand, but I know that some people might have ones that are more strong, so just keep that in mind. So that will depend on how much you put or you don't put. And then salt. And I can't also forget just the 2 garlic cloves that we'll need for the meat itself, so you can give it some flavor. And those garlic cloves are pretty big. And you see how there's all this water now in the meat. This will eventually evaporate, but I just wanted to show you how watery it gets, so don't be afraid. If it gets like that, it's okay. It's perfectly normal. And I peeled my garlic for that. And here is my green bell pepper that I forgot to include in the beginning of the video. Okay, and for our little vegetable melody for our meat, we're going to need 3 Roma tomatoes. And I'm just showing you here that it doesn't matter if they're like not perfect. They could be a little bit mushy. It's actually fine because we're going to mush them up for the meat regardless. And here I am chopping up the red bell pepper, and we're just going to do it in like big chunks because we're going to end up putting it in the food processor anyways, so it does not have to be perfect. And here is the red onion. This onion actually came out pretty bad. Like, it had a really bad ugly part, so if it comes out bad, just take off all the ugly parts. There's no need in like throwing it away, at least in my opinion. So here I was just taking out all the ugly little bits of the onion, and I am going to cut it in half, and then I'm going to reserve half of it for later for our curtido, like cabbage mixture, and then the rest here, once it's all clean, I'm just gonna chop it up roughly into rough pieces. Doesn't have to be too big, too small, just because it's gonna get processed, so it's just better for it to be a little bit chopped up, but doesn't necessarily have to be that perfect like I said before. And here I'm just separating the onion, just so once I mix everything up, it's because it just makes it better to when you food process it, for there to be a little bit of every ingredient in the blender. So that is that, and that's how it should look like. Again, not perfect. Here I'm just showing you that it's getting a lot drier in the pot now, and things are going to start crisping up now because it's a lot of the water evaporated, and now it's only left like oil, the oil of the meat, so that's gonna make it crispy once we leave it in there for a few minutes. Okay, and right now is when I'm going to season up the meat with some cumin, and I am seasoning to the gods. Okay, don't ask me measurements because I can't give them to you because I just don't measure. I just eyeball it. So I'm showing you here just so you can kind of have an idea of how much I'm putting, but honestly you're just gonna have to taste test and go as you go. I am including my oregano, my garlic, my black pepper, the beef bouillon as well. I did 2 spoons of that, and some salt, but the salt, I don't get too carried away because the beef bouillon has salt, so I'll adjust it later on once I taste test it, because I'd rather it be under salted than overly salty. And I'm going to give it a good mix and then just let it completely cook, and just evaporate that whole water, get nice and crispy. And then I am going to take a look at the garlic along the way, because I do not want it to burn, because burnt garlic is very bitter. So when it gets like translucent or soft and a little bit golden brown, I will take it out of the meat and then reserve it for when we blend everything together. And I wanted to show you the meat while it's cooling, so I really need to make sure that it cools down before I add it to all the vegetables and I start like ripping it apart basically, because I don't want to burn myself. And I wanted to show you that I didn't get it really dark. It's kind of golden brown. I didn't want to leave it in more because I didn't want it to get burnt or dry, so I felt like this was enough. I could have left it a little bit longer, but honestly I'm happy with how I left it. So yeah, we're just gonna let it chill out here, and then while it's cooling down we are gonna get started on our sauce. So for the sauce, we're gonna grab a leek. I just had this big one, but we're not gonna use the whole thing, and I'm gonna primarily use the green part of it, and this is just gonna give it some flavor. And I also didn't put it into this sauce, but you can actually also put celery, like a celery stick or something, but I just didn't have any on hand, so I just used this and what I'm gonna show you I use. And I'm just gonna show you here that please wash it, because look, every layer that I get, there's like dirt and like filth, so just please wash them very good. So after I washed them, just cut it in half, and I'm going to peel my garlic because I'm going to add 1 clove of garlic. Well, actually I think I'm gonna put 2. I just didn't show both of them, but put 2 cloves of garlic. And I have 3 like medium-sized carrots here. That small piece that I'm peeling first is going to be for the sauce. The other 2 are going to be for the cabbage that we're going to make later on, but I'm like, might as well peel them all at once. So let's take these ingredients to the stove. So in boiling water, we're gonna add all of our ingredients. So the tomatoes, the carrot, the leek, and the garlic, as well as the chicken bouillon. But just for those of you who might ask, like, why carrot? The carrot is just like a thickening agent, and it also gives it good flavor, not gonna lie. But I learned that from my mom, and a lot of people actually cook it that way, so that's just how it is, okay? And I also wanted to share that the chicken bouillon, I don't just throw it in there like the powder straight in there. I dissolve it in some water because I feel like it clumps up if you just add it directly to your sauce. So I dissolve it in a little bit of cold water, and then that really fixes it and it never clumps up that way. So we're gonna let this fully boil. So while we let that boil up, I actually remembered that I forgot to add a little piece of onion. It's not necessary, but I like onion, so I added the little piece of onion. So I'm gonna let that boil, and once it boils, the tomatoes will actually start blistering. So this is a time where if you want to, you can take the skin off the tomatoes. The blender that I have actually blends it really well, so the skin won't be there, but I just like taking it off, okay? So I took off what I could. So once it's done, I'm putting it into my blender and I'm gonna puree it. Yeah, I'm gonna puree it really good. And when I blended this, I actually didn't realize that I only added 3 tomatoes, and I was trying to make two sauces, sorry. I was making a regular one and a spicy one. So what I had to do, and you'll see it here, I had to add a can of diced tomatoes, just your regular whatever diced tomato can you have, or like whole tomatoes, something, because I actually didn't have any more tomatoes. And here are the peppers that I will be using. Those are called diente de perro. I do not know what that would be in English, but it's diente de perro. And I put some in one pot and one in the other, so one's gonna be hot sauce and one is gonna be just regular. It wasn't that spicy, to be honest. And this is what it should look like once it's done, nice and thick. But I let it simmer for at least 10 to 15 minutes. And I would say if you let it simmer, really look at it, because if the more you let it simmer, the more it's gonna reduce. So just don't go overboard, and then it's gonna become like, I don't know, like a paste. Okay, so just keep an eye out, and I like it this thickness, so I'm gonna leave it here. So we're done with the sauce for when we're done with the rest of the ingredients. So grab you a big bowl, it could be stainless steel like that one or plastic, and I'm going to cut my cabbage in half. I'm only gonna end up using half of it because I thought it was a lot, but I really should have done the whole thing because we just destroyed everything. and I'm going to shred it very finely. And this is a very sharp knife, so I would suggest to have a really sharp knife. And don't include the core, okay? The core, you can throw that out, we don't want that. So I'm just gonna really finely shred the whole thing here. Okay, so now that I'm done chopping it up, it's nicely chopped, fine. I'm gonna wash it in a little bit of vinegar water, just a little bit, like a drop, because if not, the vinegar will start cooking things up, I guess you could say, like softening, so we don't want that. I'm gonna shred my carrots. I'm doing it pretty fine like this, but really it's personal preference how you want to shred or dice or whatever your carrots. Okay, so this is personal preference. I'm doing 2 carrots here, and once I shredded them, there's like a little end piece that I can't get, so what I do is I just like chop it up with a knife, or like, you know, finely julienne it. That other half of onion that we reserved, and we're gonna dice this or slice it as thin as we can. Doesn't have to be too thin, but I like to do it as thin as I possibly can. And this is gonna be included into our little mix here. Again, this is personal preference if you want to dice it, but this is how traditionally I've always ever seen it in this curtido. I've seen it like sliced like this. Okay, now that we have all of our ingredients, it's time to add the seasoning. So we're gonna add some oregano. Again, I didn't measure anything, but I'm showing you like roughly like what I'm adding. But you kind of have to taste it along the way just to get, you know, if I need a little bit more of pepper, a little more salt, a little more whatever. And then this is black pepper. I try not to be heavy-handed on the black pepper, but I end up putting a little bit more. And then salt. It's better to start with less salt than to over salt something, so I just started with that much, but again I end up putting more. And we need some white vinegar, or if you have apple cider vinegar, some type of vinegar, and we're not using that much. It's like literally like a splash, like a splash. And this 9 ounce of well, this cup is 9 ounces, and I just started with a little bit, but I ended up using the whole thing because we're mixing water and vinegar, so that itself will cook up the cabbage. So we're not cooking anything here, it's literally gonna be like pickled basically. And I'm making sure to mix it nice and well so everything's incorporated, and then I taste it, and then once I tasted it, I figured that it did need a little bit more salt, and pepper. I did not add any more oregano because the oregano was fine. But again, just adjust it accordingly and to your taste buds. You could add more vinegar if you like it more vinegary, or you know, more water. You can even blanch it if you prefer. There's different ways of doing it, but this is just the way that I personally like and people in my house like it. Okay, now that I have that well combined and it's already starting to like soak up some of that vinegar and get nice and soft, I'm just gonna cover it and just let it, you know, do its thing. The longer it sits, the better. Here is the food processor. I'm using a Ninja food processor, but you can use whatever you have, or if you use a blender, I don't know, I just want to suggest a blender because it won't get the right texture that we're looking for. Here we are going to mash up our tomatoes. Literally, you can dice it if you want, but I just rather do it with my hands. It's a lot more, makes cooking a lot more fun if you ask me. So here I'm just gonna rip these tomatoes apart. This is why I told you it doesn't matter if they're a little bit soft or a little bit like less of a crisp tomato, because it'll just make it easier to, well, that one was very juicy, to do this. And then I am going to grab my meat once I have all this combined. We're adding more seasoning to the meat and vegetables later on, and I'll let you know why. But what I'm gonna do is even though these pieces are already like small, I'm making them smaller just so that the food processor gets them nice and combined and shredded, I think, better. I guess you could start with the big pieces, but I just find it just doesn't do the job. So I just like to piece everything together and then put it into the food processor. And just a really big disclaimer, like, I'm using my hands a lot in this video, but just know that they're very clean. There is soap and water that I am washing my hands constantly with, so I'm not contaminating anything, and plus this is for me and my family, so we are not selling this food, but yeah, definitely a lot of love with these hands, but they're definitely clean, so just wanted to put that out there before someone says something. Okay, and then now I'm adding salt. You want to add more salt because the vegetables don't have salt, so automatically it's going to make things more bland now. So I'm just re-adding salt, beef bouillon, pepper, and that's it though. No more cumin, because I feel like the cumin that I put into the meat was enough and I don't want it to be overbearing or overpowering. I'm going to re-add my garlic that's nice and soft, and then just kind of chop, you know, break it apart. And I did 2 batches in my food processor, and I'm going to also show you, I'm only pulsing it, so I'm literally only processing it, like not blending, okay, because we don't want it to be watery, we want it to be still like a paste. And here I'm going to show you how you can leave it like this, but it's really personal preference. I like it to be a little bit more shredded, a little bit more, you know, well processed. So I'm gonna leave it in for a few more minutes before it's good for me. Now that it's all processed, I do want to mention that you have to kind of check to see if the moisture level of this meat, like if it has too much water, we need to get rid of that, because one thing I learned when I was first making them is like the more water this mixture has, the more it will release when you're cooking the pupusa, which will make like a watery cheese filled mess. So I noticed that there was a lot of water, so what I'm going to do is take it out. And then this is all the water that came out of all the meat. So just an FYI, the drier the better. So now my dry meat is ready for our cheese. So we'll start, yeah, this, I can't believe that's how much water was in the meat. But yeah, it should be nice and dry like that. Nice, dry, and compact. And now I'm taking my mozzarella. It says queso para pupusas, but it's literally mozzarella cheese. I had left it out for like about an hour or two in the fridge so it get nice and soft. This cheese was so buttery. It was so like, it was a dream to work with, but honestly it's like no flavor. Like it was just not it for the cheese. I would just use regular mozzarella, because I don't know if this just wasn't like pasteurized or something, but it just was not, I don't know, it just didn't wow me for cheese. And for it to be $10 for one little block of cheese, it's a lot. So I was struggling trying to open it, and you want to shred it in the blender because it's just going to make it faster. Some people do this by hand, by the way, make the cheese mixture for the pupusa, but I like to use a food processor because I think it goes really fast. And I'm gonna add a splash of milk. You don't have to do this, could be water, but I just think it's better to do milk with cheese. So just a splash so that it doesn't get stuck. And then the way this just like blended so good, I'm gonna show you right now. So I stop blending when I see big clumps start to form in the cup. This is generally when it's good to go. So if you see here, look, it's just so soft. It's like, I can't even explain how nice and soft this cheese felt. I was like, wow, this is gonna be so good for the pupusas. And here I'm just trying to form balls to see if that's good or not. But yeah, for me this was perfect and ready to go. After this, I was deciding what type I should make, if I should make some cheese or mixed ones, but I decided I'm just gonna do some Chicharron con queso only. And I tried to make 2 cheese ones, but again, this cheese, I don't know, I just wasn't feeling it. So I just mixed up like half of the mixture in a separate bowl because I didn't want to be contaminating too much. So just in case I didn't make that many, I didn't want to be touching everything, so I just took like half of the mixture, mixed it with cheese, just ready for the pupusas, and then the other half I mixed later on, but I used it all. Now this is the part that's the hardest part, making the masa. So I'm just showing you here that I'm using a 1 cup to kind of measure out how much I put in here, so I could kind of give you an idea. So I put 5 cups in here, but I ended up by the end using probably 6, because I think I ended up using 1 more, like dry. And what I'm doing is I'm heating up some water because I'm gonna add, I believe I added 5 cups or like 5 mugs of hot water, and then I let it rest for like about 10-15 minutes till it cooled down, and then I started mixing with a little bit more cold water. So that's why I think I added just a little tiny bit too much water, like cold water, so that's why I needed to add that additional cup. But it really wasn't like a whole cup though. It was like I grabbed the cup and sprinkled it until I got the texture that I desired. Okay, and also make sure to add the hot water, but mix with something that's not your hand. Okay, I don't want anybody burning themselves. And this is personal preference. I saw some lady that does these pupusas online here on YouTube, and she does this, and it actually came out really good. Like the masa actually came out really good, texture wise and everything. Would I do this again? Probably not, because I had to wait too long for it to cool down enough for me to be able to put my hands and like amasarlo. So I probably would not do that, or maybe just do like one or 2 cups of hot water and then the rest just all cold. So altogether I think I used about 9 cups of water. Okay, but don't quote me on that because I wasn't really keeping track. And just an FYI, this is a lot of elbow grease. Just make sure you are getting all the lumps and clumps out. You want a nice and smooth masa. So this took me probably like 10-15 minutes to do, and I just was making sure that it was clumpless. You know, just get it nice and smooth and take your time, and it should be nice and soft, but it should be like Play-Doh like, okay? It should be Play-Doh like, and it shouldn't stick to your hands like a lot. But once it dries out a little bit, because it's gonna dry out a little bit, it gets the perfect consistency. So I like to leave it a little bit more like soft than it should be, because it's gonna get to the right consistency. And you probably saw it in the clip before, I did add salt to the maseca, but only salt. Some people add chicken bouillon, but I personally don't like to. My mom does put that, but I don't like it. I just think salt is enough. You don't even have to put salt, but as long as your ingredients that are gonna go in the pupusa are well seasoned, but trust me, you don't need anything else on the masa. But it's, again, personal preference. Different families, different households make it different. You're gonna need a bowl with water and oil, okay? And just put a really good amount of oil. So it should be like really half and half oil, half water. This is gonna be what's gonna help the masa not stick, and it's gonna make it so easy to mold and make these pupusas. You also need some type of spatula. This one has like a groove. I would suggest one with a groove because it's easier to get under the pupusa and not like destroy it, and a metal one, but silicone is good too, but not plastic because they'll melt. And it's really important to heat up your comal really good. This is the comal that I have. You basically, I don't even know what these called. These like griddles, right? They're like griddles, whatever you have really. And just make sure it's nice and hot. And I'm adding some oil just to give it like a non-stick layer of oil, okay? And then let that heat up really well. So while it's heating up, I'm grabbing a little ball of masa, wetting my hand with that oil water mixture. That's gonna help it not stick to your hand. And I'm just showing you a few different ways that you can do it, but like honestly, whatever, just watch what I do and find what works for you, because different people, you find certain things a lot easier than others. So this is how I made the first one, just to show you one way that you can do it. I always take out the excess masa so that they don't have too much masa and not a lot of meat, because I want it to be more meaty than masa. I pat it. It's not gonna be perfect, guys. One thing I learned making these, it's not gonna be perfect. So as long as it's a freaking circle and it's eatable and it's cooked all the way through, you're good, okay? And obviously, like, the more you do it, the better you're gonna get. And as far as cooking time, it depends, because it's gonna depend on how like thick or thin yours are. But what I try to stick to is to like a 3 flip like maximum, and also just kind of see the color of the masa just to make sure it looks cooked, because you don't want uncooked masa. Like, that will just not be good. But yeah, like 3 flips and it should be good. And before you flip it the first time, you don't want it to be dried out. You want to make sure to not leave it on one side too long before you start flipping, okay? Because then that could also ruin your pupusa. I think the moral of the story here is just try it. I was always scared to try making this on my own, but once I did it, like, I loved it. Well, then again, I like to cook, so I love doing it, and just like, it's so satisfying being able to do something. And like, the more you do it, the better you get. So like I said, like at the beginning of the video, this is like the 4th time I made them, and when I started, oh my god, like, hot mess. But now look, it's getting better, and obviously the more and more I make it, the better I will get at making them look better, look nicer, you know. Also, one quick hint that I noticed is my, what do you call this, griddle was too hot. I did turn down the heat, but it just was a little bit too hot. So you see there's some parts that are gonna look a little bit black, but they're not burnt. I will tell you that they were not burnt. They did not taste burnt. It was just the cheese. For some, I don't know, something about the cheese, like it wasn't actually, like, it didn't feel like it had cheese, which was the weirdest part. My brother was even like, did you put cheese in these? I'm like, yeah, I did. He's like, yeah, because I can't really tell, like, you can't feel it and you can't really taste it. So that's why a good cheese is the number one thing here. A takeaway that you can take is get a good cheese, all right, a good melty cheese. So altogether I was able to make 30 pupusas with the mixture and everything that I made in this video. So happy, so content with how it came out. Definitely you have to try this out on your own. Don't be scared, okay? Don't be scared. Like, you learn on the go, okay? I'm not perfect, but you see how, like, they're not that cheesy. I'm telling you, that cheese, man, different cheese. But have a side of curtido and salsa, and these were so delicious, came out so good taste wise, and definitely highly recommend you try this out. And if you do, leave it in the comment below how it went. If you have any questions, let me know. And of course, I love you guys. Like, comment, and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching my video.